Aye. Thank you. Good morning. Welcome to our Wednesday, Beware the Ides of March, March 15th, Budget and Facilities meeting. So again, we have a lot to cover in this exciting budget season. I am just going to give a quick update before we turn it over to Kathy. And I just wanted to say that yesterday the announcement was made as far as how the state budget is progressing. As it relates to education, the Assembly One House budget highlights some of the things that we've been talking about as a board and the school district and in the community. It strongly wants to eliminate the high impact tutoring set aside, so that's something that would be very worthwhile for us. The funding of universal free meals, the increase of capital outlay limit to $250,000, which again we brought up. Increases to BOCES aidable salary limit and special services aid, which also directly relates, I think, to the CTE programs. And if we can have those increases, it opens up a lot for us as well, which are one of our budgetary items. And the rejection of charter school expansion, which just affects public school systems in general, if more monies are going to that endeavor. So I just want to thank you, Ms. Gilliard, thank you for joining us. We just started, so you didn't really miss anything. And now that's really the only update I have, and I'm going to turn it over to you, Kathy.
Sure.
Thank you.
So, good morning, everybody. Actually, I was up in Albany this weekend, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, and I had a chance to actually meet with our Assemblywoman, Gina Solidi. She was very gracious. She came and spoke with my organization about a lot of the concerns you just spoke about. Also, there's something called prior year adjustments, where the state actually goes in and takes funding, like state aid from schools if there were clerical errors. So they'll take it right away without warning, but then if the error is in their favor, they'll actually not give it to you, they'll give you in a queue. That could be like 19 years. So typically, this used to be funded for $18 million each year to reduce the queue. But for the last 3 years, that has been taken out of the budget. So this one house, the budget that just dropped last night, it includes $36 million for schools, which is a huge win for schools. So
Do we have money in the queue?
that I have to look at. Jessica, do you know if we have state aid that was taken away?
Like money
In the
back here?
queue, like related to capital?
I'm not sure.
That's something we have to look into, because when I was up there, everybody was talking about how it could be small amounts, like 12,000, it could be 60,000.
So now that they have this increase, and if we do find that we have money in the queue, does that mean that they're able to actually fund faster than the 19 years? And
Well,
or is that the other component of it?
The
or-
analysis that we're putting forward is even if they have 18 billion each year,
Yes.
it will still take 19 years to get to the end. And there's something like $280 million in this queue.
Jesus.
That's exactly what Gina said when we told her she would, which is a lot.
$280 million.
So what happens is if we make a clerical error with transportation where the dates are incorrect, or something that just numbers that we put in the ST3 are wrong, we would actually take the money that we owe them, like this year or last year. But if it was something from like 2001, you wouldn't see it, like they would not give it to you. So we were saying, why don't you wash it if you're taking it from a district, look at their fee. So I mean,
So more to report on that, we're gonna follow up in that
Yes,
regard.
And theoretically, they could make a mistake and they, because we
Some of
made a
this-
mistake.
some
and
of
then
this
take
on
it
their
and then
end,
wait
actually.
19 years to get
Yes.
back.
Yeah.
it doesn't matter if it's a
But I haven't actually given back.
or theirs, they take it whether it's their error or
Where
not.
did 19 years come from?
Just because of the
Time,
size,
just time.
the size of the queue, I guess.
How long it takes to process.
Somebody's counting the pennies individually.
Yeah.
And they only give out 3 pennies at a time, so when you do that, it
So
takes.
$250 million is sitting somewhere.
Yeah. In a queue, so they're hoping that schools don't actually file all the paperwork to get it, because I could be retired, hopefully, by 19.
Right.
All right, but
I
somehow.
will definitely be retired.
Boy, you really sprinkle a lot of sunshine when you come to these meetings.
Thank you.
Well,
Yes. Yes.
there was a lot of focus on electric bus and the 19, and figuring out how to actually fund that. One of the main themes was to really start preparing. They're not sure if it's actually gonna come to fruition in the time frame that they want, but they want schools to actually start considering that. There was a gentleman who spoke about actually helping to purchase buses and helping to lay the infrastructure, because you have to dig trenches and put the actual electricity in. So there's a lot yet to come with that. And I was actually speaking about the possibility of working it into an energy performance plan, which we're currently looking into. So that was a nice contact that I made up there to look at that.
Right.
And the possibility of solar. You know, I don't think we would generate enough from a solar farm to do all of the buses, but it would be something to supplement and help me just have a smaller carbon footprint. So, that was like the main update and everything you guys have spoken about.
That's great. Thank you so much.
So can we just go back for 1 second? So the main points on the legislative budget that they introduced is to the universal free meal,
Fund it, to fund it.
the elimination of the set aside. Is that, I mean, would you say that those are
Just the
two?
strings attached to it.
Is correct, right.
And the
So you'd still get the
prior year
money, you'd still get the money that's allocated,
Yes.
it's just now, but foundation aid would be fully
Right, I just
unrestricted.
wanted to say what the highlights would be that would affect our school district the most.
I do think that the top four, I really do think the increases in capital outlay limits to 250,000 affects us also. Not necessarily, I don't know,
We were asking for like 500,000 my organization, but 250 is good.
right,
I know Brian's.
I think it's 250, but it's adjustable for labor markets, so it would be up to 500 for downstate region.
Okay, so
So
then that would
right
be
now it's
very good.
100 throughout the state.
for us, it would go
The
to five.
legislation is to bring it to 250 at a minimum throughout the state, and then adjusted for those labor markets. So obviously the highest labor market,
Right.
we would go up to 500.
and that's excellent if that can happen. And then the BOCES aidable salary limit and
Right.
special services aid, again, if they're able to increase those, that then opens up the door for our reimbursable rates, correct? And the
Yes.
CTE programs and how many students we would be able to send, or potentially we would have to see how it all works out in the numbers,
Yeah,
correct?
so what I believe is, they figure out how much we can get reimbursed from. I think currently, I'm not sure if it's set at like 75,000 or 150,000, that's reimbursable.
Right.
They want to increase it, so we get more aid on the salary of people working with the children.
Great.
I just wanted to.
No, I appreciate that, thank you. That's great.
Yeah.
On the buses, am I interpreting correctly that this information doesn't change anything for us? Because we still really can't buy them, we still really can't put the infrastructure in. The message is like, they're serious and they're trying to figure out.
Yeah,
how to make it work.
so one of the issues I brought up when I was up there is that if they first worked on the infrastructure with the utilities and even perhaps the county, like what are they doing at the county level? Are the MTA, are they going electric? You know, and they said that some of the counties are, that we should speak with our towns and counties and cities. So
That
that
is
is
in line with
one
what we've been saying to the county, right, on a different level with the legislative task force. We have been talking to our county legislator who did go to the county and ask for the county to just all get on board and fix the infrastructure here, so.
Well, we had Mrs. Brooks go, she spoke to the county legislature about this issue, which is great.
Yeah,
Well, yes, for all of us.
no, I'm saying it was our legislator's request that we go there, so she's the one who's initiating it, yes.
So there's actually a meeting next Thursday, the 22nd, there, but that Brian and Miss Allen are going to go to. It's with PSEG,
Oh, good.
and school districts. I wanted to go, but I have a conflict. But it's going to speak about what the challenges are, and how we can prepare for that, so.
That's perfect.
I can echo the sentiments. When NISBA did the analysis of the budget in January, they had representation from Governor Hochul's office who did say, now granted, no one was saying we're changing the timeline, but the provisions that they put into the budget this year where there are asking for information. You do, if this passes, then you have to fill out some forms about where we are and where we are in the planning process and where the pitfalls that we have. And they said that was all part of them to just gain information about where is everyone, because I guess when they planned all this, they thought everyone would be much further along than they are, and they're seeing
but
they're
why?
not.
Right.
But why, but at least, right, they're trying,
We've
so
had a
yes.
foundation aid issue in the state for how many years? They think that we
Yes.
just like, because we felt like it went electric.
Right. No, I agree, but at least some of the actions they're taking are now working in our favor, and at least hopefully they'll change the dates on some of this, because they'll have to, I don't see a reason
One of
why they
the
can't.
big issues too is operating under a tax cap. It's difficult to lay the groundwork for the infrastructure because we're tied and we want it to be student focused.
Right.
We're in the business of education, not.
Yeah, we don't have.
We-
We
right,
don't
we don't have the
line.
Right,
There's not
exactly.
education.
So I think we understand that too, and that's why I think if we do have alternative ways to actually fund it and look at it, because we would like to be greener.
Yeah, absolutely.
We
It's
just
a
need
goal.
to have the support to do that.
But it also, I mean, look, like we're dealing with a state structure where they're telling us maybe it'll take 19 years for us to pay the state to, you know, there's a lot of, there's problematic nature to this funding that means that it would be completely irresponsible for us to lose other things in our budget in order to comply with mandate that the groundwork isn't there for yet.
Right.
Right? Like, we can't do that. It's not responsible.
The positive is that we had all these things on our radar, we've been advocating, and it does appear that it's been well received, so I hopefully
So
it
just
all
to keep you
continues
guys
to move in that direction, that'd be great. Since you are talking about buses, I know that you had a recent bus visit, so would you like to would you like to go right into that?
I'll
side
give
of
it
it?
5 minutes. I
Thank
went to North Carolina where Thomas Bus Company, they manufacture their buses. And it was pretty amazing, like the safety regulations that go into actually building a bus. And also I saw the electric buses and how that is influenced. And I actually got to drive an electric bus, you know, so I don't know why, I don't have like a license or anything. I was a little scared, but I did well, I didn't hit any other buses.
Yeah, the parallel park, that was there.
No, they had to weave, he said just weave in through here and stuff, but it was really good to gain knowledge about the challenges of having, you know, electric buses and also normal buses, you know, so I think going forward, Mr. Frame and I had a lot of work we wanted to, trying to make us greener and possibly having electric buses in the future. And I did locate a vendor that makes the smaller buses.
Oh,
which
wow,
is,
good.
Yeah, so,
I don't know if this came out of your, or if this didn't come out of your visit, but there are, like, First Student nationally is offering some pilot programs for the electric bus, you know, to offer to different schools around the country. I don't know, did you have any discussions with this company about anything that they're looking at moving
so
forward?
they had a couple of their VPs, there's Thomas and there's Bluebird and there's one other big, starts with an I, bus company. So they manufacture the buses and they have a lot of electric ones sitting on the lots because there's not a big call for them. So when we were talking, I said, well, if you need schools to help you pilot it or stuff, you know, so it's making the network and the connection and stuff.
Perfect.
He didn't say who would his buses, but.
But you planted the seed,
I
so there
tried.
you go, yes.
So, one of the other things up at the state that came up was the banks and the, closing of the banks in Silicon Valley. So that I reached out to our treasurer and just made sure all of our funds, we only have, I'm sorry, let me back up. We have all of our deposits are insured 102%. What happens is there's a third-party collateral that they make sure everything is covered. So all of our funds are completely safe, all through the FDIC, and the collateral is held in T-bills, which is very safe. The Signature Bank in New York, that was being taken over, I think, by Bridge Signature. We do use them for our Flex program, which people pay into it for their benefit, but they assured us we only have a balance of about 90,000. So everything's insured up to 250,000.
Right.
So they assured us that it's okay. We had one teacher who had her direct deposit going into Signature Bank, so just as a precaution, we issued a live check. But it was really, I think everyone just needs to stay calm in the market and not start moving. So,
And well, we will in a second, and you want to talk to us about the demographic report. Got
Yes.
that referenced at the meeting, but you have more to share, right?
So we did discuss the demographic report, and we contracted with BOCES to perform that demographic. We received the draft of the demographic report last week or the week before. Jessica and Dr. Shields and I spoke about it. The final report should be the end of this week is what we were promised, so.
And the report you received, being drafted, still was not fully completed, only had a portion of the information that you were able to look at.
Yes.
Okay.
So you expect the final report at the end of this week?
Yes.
So I'm just asking, I want us to just kind of keep it on our radar because we are budgeting right now and we are budgeting for going forward for our, I think we've been forward thinking in doing this report. So I would like for us to make sure that we review the report before we adopt the budget. So I'm not sure what the timing is, but if you can keep that on your radar. Not that it may change anything, but I think it would be good for the Board of Education to have it in the back of our minds as far as planning is concerned. And as far as, I think, as we get into our discussions about personnel and class size and teaching staff. So if they possibly.
So we,
Sure.
Certainly if there's any surprise, right?
we have an April 3rd budget and facilities meeting right before our April 4th DOE meeting, is that correct? Yes, and so we do have that. If we felt that we needed to discuss it prior to that, because that's somewhat getting down to the line, we
Board meeting.
We do also have a board meeting coming up on March 21st. So we could incorporate it there if we want to talk about it as a board first, or we can go ahead and, bring it to that April 3rd, or move that April 3rd meeting up, depending on what works and when we get the report and your ability to review it first. Of course, we don't want you just looking at it for the first time in the budget and facilities meeting, right? Like this,
Yeah.
to have
I
a.
don't think the final draft is gonna change too much, and they add more to it. Would you say there were any surprises to the report? I didn't think there were.
Well, I think they project out a long time period. So I think it's hard to put a lot of stock in that far of prediction.
However, how
That
it
is my
aligns with
caution.
next year,
That is my
right, right,
caution.
right.
But if you're just looking out for the next 5 years, I think it's a valuable tool to look at. But they project out a bit farther.
I think we all know now life can change very quickly.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I think
So
that.
when I looked at it, I was like, I'm not so sure. But I think for using it in a more near-term perspective, I think it's a helpful tool.
I think, just really quickly, I think when we first started, we knew that they would go out in a longer term, but we were hoping to be really in alignment with the fact that we're trying to do forecasting 5 years out, right? One of the discussions we're gonna have upcoming in June is looking at our 5-year projections and being able to put some of those 5-year numbers into it should help us for future budgetary planning and, ease of modification in that regard. Not to say that the other information isn't helpful, but we really were trying to utilize that snapshot to our fullest benefit.
Is it worth inviting the demographers to the whatever meeting so that they can answer questions?
So we have
Or-
done that in the past, if you remember, I don't know if you remember, when we had the last demographer's report, it was presented at a Board of Education meeting overall, and the demographer did present to the entire, just so that there were questions, but I think we're jumping ahead. I think we first should discuss it.
We should see it, but I would, I think, I'm looking at Dr. Hunt's and Dr. Shields' faces, and they have read the report, right? And they already know what's in it, so really like practically having looked at it, I know you both have great poker faces, I just stare at your faces a lot. His face hardly moves. That's face.
When it
So,
doesn't move, that's when you know he's.
Yeah.
So-
Just moves his eye.
Right,
like, really, like, in your opinion, is it worth having a demographer, or are we at the point right now where like we should read the report
I think it's a-
discuss it.
What's the timeline? Can we give a proposed timeline, I guess, to Ms. Gilliard's point? Do we have an idea?
What?
For the board,
Oh,
should the board
Chat
see it?
about it.
Yeah, so I was hoping we'd have it by tomorrow. but
Okay,
if
great.
It's Friday. I guess I could share what I'm from.
Well, you could share it
I
with
can send it to you.
Put it in the
Again,
packet.
you
Put it in the
Put it
packet.
in
Put it in the packet, that's fine. Again, though, there's the sharing in the packet and then there's the outward sharing, so people can have a discussion, which I find the most beneficial. So do you feel you want to do something like that for the first time at the 21st meeting, the March 21st meeting? Or do you want to bring it to this committee first to discuss it in more detail and depth? I'm trying to not,
I'm suggesting
Reiterate.
that we skip this committee process part.
that's fine, I'm okay, I don't want to, I'm
Because we wind
okay.
up going to the board and we have the same conversation from the very beginning.
I'm okay with that too, yes, I just didn't
Also,
think
if
your
it's
timeline.
not controversial, which is what I'm hearing, is that there's no.
Controversial
Well,
and
wait.
public
I
information.
think it is, but.
No, but I wasn't
Can I ask
suggesting
you-
not sharing it, of course, I'm just saying, if there's nothing for us to like really have to dig into,
Right.
it's not necessary to
Well-
discuss in committee, it's just to present as the public issue.
Yes.
So I think it will have potential implications when we talk about this. So I think we need to be mindful of where we are in the process. And when we start looking at projections, we could be speaking about personnel, so.
So can I ask that, how about this? Can I ask that if the report is prepared and in time for the packet, it can be included in this week's packet? And that I charge you with getting a date as to when we would like to report it to the public? Whether it's the March 21st date, whether it's the April 4th, sometime in this near future of our budget system, at a minimum, just to at least look at how it lines up with our current budget process for this upcoming year. Does that seem reasonable and seem the way to be?
So that's reasonable, but I just want to note, and I have a feeling, Mrs. Epstein, you will agree with me too, like, we have a sense of what next year looks like,
Yes.
right?
Yes,
Like,
yes, yes,
this
yes.
is not something that should be changing our budget for next year in the last month before we adopt the budget, right? There shouldn't be something here that we don't really understand about our community and how it's growing. Or not, right?
Right,
So I think that a lot of what we wanted this for was to understand moving forward what we look like.
100%.
And the other implication here was, what do we do with this piece of land? And do we sell this piece of land? Do we use it for solar? Do we use it for something else?
Which is also falling into this review with the energy performance contract as well. So we have a lot of irons in our fires, right? I do agree with that. Again, I'm trying to be mindful of releasing an entire report that makes people jump ahead to and making conclusions that are not necessary and being
I agree
sensitive
with
to
you.
that.
I mean, I was saying it mostly to manage the expectation that this report was not because we do not understand next year.
Right.
Right, it was
Correct.
to have a sense of the whole community trajectory potentially, right? Because like you said, the further out it goes, the less we necessarily trust it, and I think, the
Except
last.
that I will remind everyone that the last report we did do was pretty accurate. And it did go further, it did go out.
Right, like,
I mean, it doesn't
So-
like COVID, all that's.
Kathy, you're gonna get it back to us. We'll put it in the packet if we're able to, if that seems reasonable, and then, and make our next
Figure
step
out.
from there, right? And you'll just keep us in the loop.
Okay, then.
Julie, I know we have revenue and expenditures to
Yes.
talk about capital in a very short period of time.
Yeah.
At some point though, maybe in the next month or so, I really would like to talk about transportation. As far as how it continually increases in double digits. And we're talking about projections and us trying to rein this in. The possibility of moving toward our own fleet at some point, I think is something we really need to consider, because there are a lot of things we have to consider as far as having a yard. I met with the Manor Haven staff yesterday after school, and they're talking about field trips and how it's almost impossible to book field trips because the tight parameters,
Right.
as far as time, how much it almost eats up of the cost. It's almost 75% of the total cost
Mhm.
for field trips, transportation. And so when you package that all together, it's something I think we really have to strongly consider. we've talked about this offline a few times. We can't, I mean, clearly budget for 30 buses, in one fell swoop. But I think we really have to strongly consider this.
So is this something that you feel we need to strongly consider before adopting this next budget?
Absolutely not.
So can we incorporate that in what we hope to do after the budget season, was to have that kind of debrief situation and then look forward as to what our priorities should be and where we should have some long-term forecasting. And this sounds like it would definitely be one of the highlights of that to add moving forward, so we don't lose a little bit momentum. So if that covers what you would like, it may be something also that a subcommittee or an ad hoc committee should really be formed to, if, with the board's approval, to delve into, because it is going to be kind of a long-term discussion if we're really going to be thoughtful about it, in my estimation.
That makes sense to me, because, part of it has to be highway funded.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And we would have to.
Capital staff connections.
Give us- If we can get the buses,
Yes.
free.
So,
If she just
I'll
kept
put that
driving,
to
we had one more.
negotiate.
so I'm gonna just say, I would like to put this on our May, June,
Yeah.
our May, June agendas for we'll put transportation on as a part of our conversation, and we'll touch base on that and add it to our long-term plan.
It'll go a long way, I think, with the staff who are really struggling with some of the things I just brought up. So the fact that we will spend time on it, I think is great.
I think it's great, and you know what, we'll even prepare in advance to make sure that we have some information and we're thoughtful with projections and things of that nature as well. Is that fair? Okay, thank you, Dr. Hines.
It's a great example, actually, of something that seems like not the education,
Yeah.
but it's having a severe impact on the education that we're delivering if we think field trips are important and we can't do field trips. Can't do them as easily or can't do as many,
Yeah.
can't do ones we want. So I think it's great.
Excellent, all right, so with that said, sorry, now we're gonna rush through our essentials and our again schools.
So,
This should
I've actually prepared.
You're actually prepared.
Well, this is a summary of the expenditures as of March 8th.
Are these
So
non-instructional, they're
This is
non-instructional or
everything.
everything?
This is
Oh,
everything. One, so people can take a copy. So you'll see the codes, and next to it, there's a description of what department. So this is a summary of like Board of Education expenditures, district clerk, chief school administrator. Sometimes it's hard, and a lot of times the board just receives the account number.
yes,
So what I've done is,
I'm gonna interrupt you for just a second. I don't think we have enough for the entire community, because wow, we have such great community members right now. So what I'm gonna ask is, are we able to put this on the agenda, or you wanna wait still? Because it's still.
what I wanted to do was actually collect it back.
Oh, collect it back,
Because
okay.
these aren't final numbers, and I didn't want it,
Out
I don't know, out in the
being
world,
seen as
okay.
this was a final number. So
Okay,
if people want to just kind of reference it or look at it. then-
Yes.
yes, I would have
Share
shared
and
for
stuff.
every other person.
Just so you have kind of an idea.
Thank you, then, Kathy, I just wanted to make sure we were clear on that.
So I highlighted in yellow, big dollar changes, so that you can kind of see, and it shows like the $12 million increase prior to these, looking at last year's budget to compare to this year's budget. So I've also printed something out in the folder's office. This talks about the codes. So it'll talk about the account codes, but it also, the account code really tells you where it is, like what the expenditure, if it's general support, that starts with like a 1. Anything with a 2, you'll see in the front, that's related to students and instruction. All of the other things, your transportation starts with a 5. The 9 is all the benefits, and then you'll have transfers to capital. So that's really debt service. So I printed out a few copies of this. I don't know if the board wants to.
I think, can you put that in the packet for the board? I think that would be very
Because it's a
helpful
good
for them.
reference.
I have that, I carried that with me already, so yes.
Can I ask what lease this is?
So this is the one we were discussing for the computer.
Oh, correct.
Yeah. So that hasn't been finalized. That's why it's kind of just a $1 million. So what we're looking to do, what we're looking to do is actually do for the the device initiative, the one-to-one initiative, we're trying to purchase more of them upfront and have a lease. So that's where that is. So you'll see, if you turn to the second page and you look under the health insurance, you'll see there's a large increase. There's like $3.7 million increase, which is a 15% change. That's really based on the premiums. And we've actually negotiated where teachers will get just a fixed amount if they're opting out of it. So that has actually saved us a couple of $100,000 because of that. And in the future, that will grow, but unfortunately, we do have large increases.
Unfortunately, those increases are in state retirement, right? Things that we really can't control, or where you're seeing those
Right.
largest
And so the
increases.
state retirement, that's for the employees' retirement system.
Right.
And below that, that's the teachers. So you'll see that's basically flat. It's gone down about 60,000, but, which is a nice thing. Social Security, of course, goes up because as salaries go up, so does Social Security. And if you look at the debt service for the serial bonds, you'll see, and also the band, you'll see like a negative 1.9. So if you recall, we did a bond for 2015, I think it was, just last year. So the band used to cover what we had to pay back. So now we don't have the band anymore, we have the actual debt service. And that really isn't a significant change. You see it's only 678. So that's why putting $1 million into like leases, that actually helps us because you're kind of replacing the debt that was there and not really adding more debt. So this is an opportune time to actually move forward with the leases. And there's a lot of infrastructure that needs to be done also. And this way look at the district on a refresh cycle.
Can you also, what's contract transport? That is for our that's out of district transportation, right? Is that it,
Not
or?
just out of district,
not just out of
that's
district?
actually for peers.
Oh, it is for
Any
peers, okay.
contractor, yeah, so it's for peers as well as, we transportation.
That one
And
is
district transport is for in-district?
district.
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
Just
so
making
those
sure.
are salaries that we would incur. Yes, the buses we would purchase, right. We also are talking about, you see the garage built in, 40,000, that's for the gas pump.
Mhm.
Yeah, yes. Then if you look at the first page, you'll also see the operation of plants and the maintenance of plant. So this 696, that really is reflective of the utilities and increasing utilities. We're also adding to our supplies that we're purchasing for the buildings. We're getting nice paper towels. That's not $280,000, but there's a lot of stuff that Mr. Graham has seen that we need to repair. So there's plumbing supplies, there's lumber supplies, right?
We can internalize some of those projects and, it's expenditure on this line, for the savings on some of the contract work that we're putting out, the overtime premiums.
That's the maintenance of plant code.
Yes.
And so if you look also, you'll see it has 3 years of historical information. So it's kind of a reference.
Could you discuss
Going back.
central data processing?
Sure.
Oh, wait, did you
Sorry,
want something?
I just want to see, going back to the supplies, even though we are changing the type of paper towels, we're also changing the applications because we're looking to reduce the impact of what students in the buildings are providing, tissues.
Right, so is that
Of course,
what
that's in there too.
That's an increase to reflect that, but we'll take on the burden of some of those classroom supplies.
So central data processing, so you'll see it starts with a 1. That's any kind of computer that's not related to student learning. So this is really for general support. So that's why you'll see it was very low in the prior years. The district didn't actually have these codes really set up, right? So, right, so there's things like our financial system come out of this. What else? Does our student management come out of that as well?
I'm not sure, but we have a bunch of different programs that come out of this now that used to come out of the 2630 code.
Right, so that, they used to be associated with the students, but it's really necessary for running the district. So any computers that we would purchase for clerical or central office would really come out of this code.
I understand that, but I see that in 22-23, we already had that code, because I think you came in and you put the code in last year.
Right.
So you had, so I just see that there's a $900,000 increase from 22-23 to 23-24. So I'm asking, is
What is
there?
the difference?
Yes.
So, we worked with, Mr. Maloney, and we did take out about 700,000 for the lease and everything, what he can get through there. But this increase, we have to also refresh the Wi-Fi and the infrastructure. They have to put up, different switches that can actually access.
So this is what Mr. Maloney had presented to the board when he was discussing his budget requests.
Yeah.
Okay.
There were also a lot of things that the principals had in their own codes, and we're trying to have that under one place, so that somebody is looking at what's being provided at the building, so that we can look at economies of scale.
So-
Be more efficient.
Some of this is a true increase and some of it is continuing to sort of clean up our budget lines
Exactly.
to put things where they make sense. And so hopefully like next year we have more of a direct comparison from line to line, you know,
And we're
or
hoping-
over time.
Right, and that was our goal, was to kind of have a smoothing, not to go up and down each year with purchasing equipment, because
Well, but there still is in this code, in this change, increases that are being asked for
yes,
by our technology department for making change upgrades
Infrastructure.
to infrastructure. I mean, so I guess my question is, and it'll be at when we final, and I'm thinking that you're gonna do this anyway, is when we get down to like finalizing the numbers, there's gotta be some flexibility in this number as well.
oh yeah,
Right?
all of these
These are
numbers are
requests.
flexible,
Right.
because
Thank you.
we still, from this budget, need to find $3.7 million.
Correct, that's what
Yeah,
I'm
we still have that,
Yes,
yes.
these things
Which
can't
is
be
also
set.
why you're
Yeah.
requesting
I mean,
these
it's
back.
the month of
Yes,
March,
yes.
we all know nothing's set.
Yeah, but it's getting to the point where we really do have to start.
Making some
Yeah,
decisions.
because, okay, I'm stressed. So,
Yeah.
the 3.7, we're going to get to, I'm sure, but these are definitely not
This
set.
must be the most stressful month in your
Are there any other expenditures that you would like to highlight as we go through this?
Well, you do see the 2250 code, the program for students with disabilities. You see there's an increase of $2 million. This is something that is really just the demographics of the students that are in, you know, that the changing demographics and what the needs are of the students. So it's really just trying to meet those the most effective way we can. We are looking at those codes closely, just like we look at all other codes to see if there's things we can do in-house more effectively.
So what does that increase consist of? Is it an increase in programs? The programs we talked about, or is it an increase in cost that is reflected in what we already offer? Like, is there any change to the programming?
Yeah, we're shifting to ICT.
Oh,
Over there, right. But ICT is mostly personnel, so this is a personnel number then in that regard.
Some of it is.
So that's what we have to
Some of
keep
it
in
is
mind.
Going to BOCES or
Okay.
based on the students. need.
I understand.
Programs.
Yeah, I think, you know, in as much as we're bringing kids back, let's say from a residential setting or other types of settings, we still have students who are going to different settings as well. at district levels.
100%.
So, you know, the goal is, of course, to bring more kids back and hopefully slow down students going down. We're still in transition.
Of course,
So
yes.
there are increased costs with that.
Of course.
And of course, like, this is an area where, the conversation's a little different, right? Like, we are legally obligated
Yes.
to meet needs here,
Mm-hmm.
right? So there should never be a conversation at a building level or there's a higher level where it's like, can we afford to provide this service? Because we simply have to provide that service if somebody needs the service, right?
So one of the things we're looking at, Stephanie's looking at now, as is Sean, is the title funds. How can we potentially, utilize the title funds that we have, maybe in a different, take some of the things that are in the general fund.
That's a great idea. It's a wonderful idea. Thank you. That's a, that's a bit you just shared.
So I don't know if you want to go into any more detail on this. I think this part is self-explanatory, unless there are any questions further.
I mean, I think going forward, my questions, and I suspect the rest of the questions, are gonna be about efficiency, right?
Right.
And if we're trying to serve our students the way we should, but in the most efficient way. If we're maximizing with ICT, so it's really available and provided to everybody who needs it. And hopefully that's lowering our attendant other district costs if we can serve our students here. Obviously that's the legal goal too, right, is to put the least restrictive environment. So I suspect that's not a conversation for today, but it's a conversation we'll have at some future point.
So I'd like to, get the opinion of this committee. Is something like this helpful? So for example, as we move forward into the April meeting for the Board of Education, which hopefully we have our state numbers a little more accurate, we've found our $3.7 million, and we're looking at a less draft, but yet still draft version of a budget, is having this laid out in presentation format, in addition to that compilation of all of the requests that, we have been hearing about in maybe a one-pager, putting those two together side by side, is that make it for a clear presentation? And I don't know if this is too much work, but for when looking at all of this, right? Because we're seeing, the 901,000, okay, now we can marry it with these technology things as we go through. So for the April presentation from the Board of Education, maybe not every slide has to go through each individual thing, but even just a comprehensive update of this document with a comprehensive list of all the requests that have been approved. If you want to go so far as say, this was all that was asked, and this is where we finally landed, that's to your decision. I don't need to, we already know what was requested. I just need to know what's landed and then compare it against these dollar increases for us to be better
I
informed,
think it would
right?
be very helpful presentation-wise to have that in April, exactly what you said. I think it's also actually helpful to highlight what was asked and what actually made it in. Because I think one of the things that we as a board may sometimes forget, and I think is important for when we're discussing it with the community, is that just because somebody asked for it, or because a building flooding was necessary or whatnot, it didn't mean that it actually made it into the budget, that there was some thought process in eliminating things that you guys don't think is necessary. So I think it would be helpful to have here are all the asks, and it really shouldn't be like, it just, here are all the asks.
Right.
Here's what we're proposing, goes into the budget, and here are the codes by line, right? So proposal, goes into code number 2020, making up numbers, right? And so this is why you'll see an increase in 2020, like you said.
Yes.
So I think it's a good way for us to just basically see where
It just
where it
clearly
lies.
connects the
I do
lines.
agree,
It
but I
does,
think we
right?
should
Yeah.
put in the asks because
Okay,
it's
that's
important to highlight.
You're good, yeah.
I'm good with that, and I agree. I would just love one more piece of information, and I don't know if your asterisks may mean this already.
No, that's just from the computer.
So the
I don't know.
other piece is, because we are moving around stuff, I think it would be helpful to either note or add a column that tells us what's an actual increase and what's a moving around. Even if it's just a note and we don't have the exact numbers on it, because I think otherwise when we have this conversation, we're probably gonna be asking the same thing with the rest of the board that's gonna sit through this, is gonna be asking, wait, what's an increase and what's movement?
So if I could be honest, this process has been going on since November. So there have been asks that people have asked for that aren't even in here. So it's like going back and forth for like 4 months. So you're kind of asking me to tell you everything.
No, just the requests that have been presented at the board meeting.
Oh, okay.
Just those requests.
Yeah.
We don't need to know the 4 months back, just the ones,
The ones that you
Right.
heard about.
just the ones we know about. So just the ones that we've been informed about.
Lead to this because.
That's okay if it doesn't line up perfectly, you can always describe and explain what's gonna happen. I think, again, we go through several work sessions where we see all of these requests, and depending on the minds and the number and everything, and then it all changes so much.
I'm not sure what's
So,
actually needed.
It just is a helpful, like, summary of this is where we were, and this is where we were, are landing, right? And then have the financial codes, and then to Rachel's point, I think it's
Maybe you
really-
could just say reason for change or something, like, you could call it just a reason for change that says.
Actually, the
Like
column
the
that says
meeting.
reason for change would be, where you would put in, present, you could actually say requests presented on March whatever meeting. Like that would be, or reason for change, code change. Like,
Right,
that's an easier way
So
to do
really
it.
just
Yes.
major increases. I mean, if there's an increase of $7,000.
no, major increases, only
Yeah,
major
we don't need
increases.
to know about the crazy stuff Dr. Cummings asked for. We don't.
Right.
They didn't make it past, December.
Okay,
No new furniture for his office.
all right, great. So that was great, thank you, Kathy, for going through all of that exercise, and if you have any other questions, we can go forward and make sure. We want this user-friendly, I think you've already done most of the work, in all honesty, we're just gonna make it in like a 1-page or 2-page thing, yes.
And the truth is, I think that it's not our job to be in the small numbers of it, so I
No,
think
but
it's more
it's
important for
right.
us to understand the roots of why the change was made and that it was,
But that's
was all
what this is.
granted.
This is
Right,
what
exactly,
change
right.
represents.
But I
I don't need to see $55 for this, $100 for this, and it needs to add up to.
So
60.
I'm really saying, and I suspect the rest of the committee agrees with me, that we trust you and like use your judgment on how you think the best way is to present it, so that we have a sense of what we're asking for. It doesn't need to be down to the penny.
Because that's how I get sometimes. Everything down to the penny, I don't.
Well,
There you go then, yes.
For our budget,
Yes.
hopefully.
Yes.
That it is, but
All right, for revenue now, we're gonna go switch gears a little bit and start this conversation.
but it's done.
Oh, and we're gonna collect these papers if everyone could just make sure they get returned to the table, that would be great. Thank you so much.
This is historical perspective of the revenue. I also have the state aid.
Sorry?
Yes, that's great, thank you, yes.
Thank
Thank you for taking all the time and everything.
This is very.
Thank you. Yes. Are we not so happy with all of this? We're very happy with all of this. You know how excited I am about all of this. Everyone, I love the budget.
So if everyone has this one with all the different colors.
Yes.
You were born for this job.
I love spreadsheet. Okay, go ahead. Yes.
So the different colors, I have to explain about myself. I highlight a lot of things and I have to see. There's a few different things that go into foundation aid or BOCES aid or test, so I color code everything to make sure each year I'm comparing apples to apples. So I included last year and the estimated budget for this year. So if you look at the 22-23, you might say, well, when I look at the governor's run, their numbers for 22-23 are different from that.
Yes.
Which they are, but this is what we knew at the time of the budget last year. So this is what we budgeted for.
Got
So those numbers change based on the information that's in the database at the time. So that's why they may look like they're increasing our revenue by 15%, but it really only increased 10% if you look at what we budgeted for. So just to clarify that, but this 23-24, I laid out the different foundation aid, the excess cost aid, and you can see the variance. So we are getting 3.9 million more in foundation aid. If you go down to the bottom, you see the UPA. Now that's taken out of the general aid up above. it's presented to us all as one. So a lot of people think, oh, you're getting so much more, but this is really federal funds and can only be spent on the universal pre-K. It's treated kind of as a grant, and we need to report on it to the state to actually get the funding and to draw down that funding. So this does not affect the taxpayers. It doesn't go, we don't levy taxes against this funding. So you'll see that there was a tutoring set aside.
That's
We
what
still-
we're discussing.
Right, that's what we were discussing. So just for everybody who might not understand, foundation aid, all the districts were supposed to be made whole this year, which according to this, we will be made whole. But then there was a percentage taken out as a set aside to look at high impact tutoring. So districts were kind of upset because they may already be doing that. And this would have to be focused on new initiatives, not things that we're already doing. So districts felt it was unfair to be told what to do with foundation aid because it's already.
I'm gonna do a second. For anyone coming in, and you may be coming for the next meeting, this is a budget and facilities meeting. You're certainly welcome to stay. Please do. We're gonna merge right into the next meeting. Don't be surprised. So, yeah. Go
All right,
ahead.
so I'll do this for 2 minutes.
You have more than 2 minutes. I just saw the surprise on people's faces. I just
That it
wanted to
already
make it clear.
started, okay.
Yes, you're okay. All right, so keep going, Kathy. I'm sorry, I did such a great job.
So right now, we have the governor wants to set aside, we have the one House bill that they don't want to set aside. So once they do, they're negotiating with the 2 women and a man. And we'll see what happens to that. Okay, so now the next sheet, this blue sheet, this gives you a historical perspective of the revenue that the district has been recognizing. So you'll notice up until 23, these are till 22, these are actual numbers. And then 23 and 24 are just budgeted because 23 is the current school year, and we haven't finished it obviously. So this kind of gives you, there are more specific details, but this is a summary of the different revenue that we receive. You'll see the miscellaneous, that has things in it like gifts and donations. It'll have various other things that we get. It could be insurance recoveries also.
So this miscellaneous also includes like when we're going through the budget and if the HSA donates something, this
Yes.
is incorporated into that as well. Okay.
And we don't really budget.
Budget.
We don't budget,
Yeah,
right,
we
no,
don't.
yes.
Right. We do budget some, but
Right, but
not
really-
that extent.
Right,
Yeah.
there's no way of protecting.
Like you'll see in this column, the 2024, right, I budget 424.
Right,
Because you know you're gonna be getting some.
Although it looks like we've budgeted much less
Then
Then we
than
actually
what we've
get.
actually received,
Right.
even going back to 2015. So
Yeah.
Yes.
You're being very conservative.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, looking at property tax, you can see there, that's an estimate, that's what I put in to be under the tax cap, to be at the tax cap. So, given the current budget we have, this would actually be $3.7 million more because we're over. So that's what we need to get to, yes. So the pilots, I've estimated at 6.3. The STAR, I really just assumed the same amount as last year because that number fluctuates based on people that can actually receive it. You'll see the adult ed, in 2020 and 2021,
Yeah. you
had COVID, so you didn't have as much revenue. This year it does look pretty good, it's doing well, right, it does, the adult ed.
Yeah.
And also the driver's education is, doing pretty well. And all of the rest, I think, is pretty self-explanatory. If you look at interest in earnings, I do believe it's going to increase because you see the current year, we've only budgeted 50,000, but for next year I have 250. We do have more funds in our bond, so we'll collect revenue on that interest, but also the interest rates have increased. And you see our use of facilities.
So can I ask about use of facilities? The after-school care program, the I don't remember on that, do we charge?
They charge a
Facilities
lot,
for that?
they charge a lot for fee,
So-
not for use of facilities.
Did you account for that increase? Because now we have, I think, potentially more students using.
Yeah, I didn't really put it in here just because I didn't think it was gonna be that significant. There are other issues, and we have our audit that they were doing about use of facilities.
Yes, that's great.
We have a lot of people using our fields, as Mr. Graham was discussing with me yesterday, and we're using our lights, and we don't charge for that. So that might be something that we need to look
I
at.
think we're adding that with our transportation discussion also. Yes, yes, and that's, it could be added, so that's fine.
When's the last time we revisited the fees?
I was not on the board, but a parent council co-president, so probably.
It's pre-COVID.
It is
right?
pre-COVID.
Right, remember, it was
2019.
Dave Cook and Day. I
Yes, it
believe,
was.
And it was a little bit.
It was after the turf fields were finally in,
That
it's, yes.
was-
I was on the budget committee.
Yeah. So it really should be something we add, especially moving forward for next year, if it is causing, and utilities are only going up. We
I
really-
agree, we should charge, we should
Yes.
change our
And
We
fees.
have some
Like I said-
recommendations, but we're in the process of having it audited right now, so we wanted to get that.
So let's-
That's great, I know, I think that's great. Do we have that timeline, that audit should be
So
close
I
to?
did ask him yesterday about it, he said he's hoping by the end of this week.
Oh.
So,
Which
This
probably
is, we are killing it this
because we
week,
keep asking
yes.
everybody, okay, where is it?
Yes, 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 okay, wonderful, so that'll be one.
So- Should we add that to a budget committee meeting?
Once the
Soon?
reports are-
Yeah, so the audit committee, we can, if those reports are gonna be done soon, the audit committee is reviewing those reports as they ask for them. We can bump up our April meeting so that we can then bring it forward. Hopefully, if we could potentially, I don't know if we can get it
I'll
before March
see, I
21st.
think that the draft is gonna be by the end of this week, we want to have something completely finished.
All right, we'll figure out how we can fit that.
But it would make sense actually to get it into this year.
No, I agree with you,
100%, we should
100%.
absolutely.
We're not approving our budget till April 18th anyway, right? So we have time still between now and then to make that adjustment. 17th.
Oh, 18.
18th.
So are there any
Never mind.
questions about the revenue, because I know, I don't want to take.
I don't-
your time.
No, we did transfer capital.
Transfer to capital we have left. Do we want to check? Oh, You do have a
Miscellaneous.
Yeah.
Maybe you said this before. Is there a reason why the projections are as low as they are? Miscellaneous compared to just-
Being conservative.
Yes.
No, I may be conservative, but.
Also, these could be insurance recoveries
Okay.
also, so sometimes that falls into here. It's really, I do like to be conservative,
No, I
and we do have a lot of.
I'm just looking at us whittling down to 3.7, considering
100%.
potential other
Right.
revenues. That's all.
So Dr. Hines, I know it's 10 o'clock and we're supposed to have a cafe with Mike, but can we take an extra 10 minutes? Is that what you think it would be? Maybe even 5 to have this transfer to capital? Thank you for agreeing.
It's kind of self-explanatory, I do give, so one of the major takeaways is if you look at 1920, how small the transfer to capital was. For this size district, only having 380,000 is shocking.
It was shocking at the time also.
It was shocking to us.
So that's the reason, like there is a steady increase, the district has their roofs that need to be repaired. I know there's 2 more years left of needed roof repairs. So for next year, this is really the third to last year. We have the Daly Elementary School roof project and Salem roof project. And this would be the estimated cost, assuming an 8% escalation, which is what our architect gave us. Then the flooring in the district and the bathroom district-wide really need to be addressed. So Mr. Graham and I thought it was valuable to put at least 100,000 in each of those things so that each year we could look at that.
So when we say district-wide means this, it could be in sporadic places across the,
We
it
would
could be one
prioritize,
bathroom
yeah.
at Weber, one the floor, sporadic, right?
As needed, yeah,
As
we would prioritize and then determine.
So, and the last,
So similar to the way we're treating the roofs.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right, our floors are going,
Yes.
Now that we know the roofs aren't coming down, we don't want anybody going through the forest, and so we're being proactive, right?
To make it cyclical, so you're not looking at 1 year,
Yes.
50 bathrooms, we're trying to do 4 a year.
And there's some carpeting too that's kind of nasty, that needs to be ripped out, but, just much.
Are we now ripping out carpeting and putting floors
Are
down?
they tile? Yeah, we're doing tile, yes, we're eliminating it.
And one of the other issues, well, not issues, but something that was brought up at the last board meeting was the tennis courts. So, Mr. Brown, would you like to?
Sure, so, we have 3 proposals, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but, they are, bad, worse and worse. I think it's about $1.2 million for a, replacement in kind of the 5 courts, doing there's some drainage issue with the area of walking down to Montfort Lot, there's some washouts, some stairs, so there's reinforcement of that, replacement of the 5 courts in kind, and adding lighting. That is the lowest package. They go up,
1.2.
yes. They go up from there with options on, Mr. Schrottweiser has said, 5 courts is tight, our matches go late, which is one of the reasons for prioritizing the lighting, because with only 5 courts, we have to do more matches as opposed to if we had 6 or 7 courts. So we did ask the architect to look at adding 2 courts, and unfortunately, again, because of the geographic layout of that area, and the topography, you have to do some retaining walls, which would be about $3 million to add the 2 courts in that area, or just put 2 courts in another area down lower in the Montfort Lot area. But Nick said that that's not something, that they think they could get a lot of value out, even though they had courts and they had space for the community, supervision wise, they didn't think it would be worth it. So we're at the adding the 2 courts at the mid-level, or just replacing the 5 courts in kind, but adding the light so that the matches can continue later into the evening, especially in the fall when it's dark pretty quick.
So I have 2 questions, I have 2 questions. So I think that our tennis courts are very precarious, not that I'm looking to add $1 million, but last year we talked about the tennis courts and they were on their last leg. This year, they've got to be on their last toe or whatever, right, at this point. How much longer do we have before we have a real issue? I mean, you even talked about drainage things, issues.
So yeah, we're concerned with the washout of that area. We're not at a structural, there's no hazard right now, but it's definitely something that we're monitoring. We are doing crack repairs, those are a few $1,000s, but each year, those costs are going up, and the times that we're doing them, the frequency that we're doing them are going up. So we're using some of that money that, again, while it's not comparative to $1 million, is money that, would not be needed should we replace the courts.
Is there any creative funding that we can look for? I know we discussed it a little bit last year with regards to the tennis courts, meaning, is there a grant that's out there for something? Is there any sort of funding we can kind of put in with regards to the waiver with the energy performance contract? Is there a sponsorship of some sort? So, can, I don't know, Wilson give us, whoever makes the tennis, could we go? I'm just trying to think. I know we talked about it at the last board meeting. Dr. Block asked for the tennis courts to be put into the transfer to capital number.
Right.
Which, if we as a board decided to do that, we would be adding, right now, as according to your numbers, $1.2 million to transfer to capital.
Or
So-
taking something out of transfer.
Or taking something
right,
out,
which has
right?
not been part of our plan, right?
Right, so I don't know that, I don't think he was looking. And
I don't think he- I
the board
think he
would
was
wanna
looking
take
to
away
add,
the
I know.
J.W. Roof,
Yes.
for instance.
Yes.
is for the-
Yes, I'm just pointing out the option.
But that would mean, in this case, if we have 2.2, we added, 1.2, it's, 3.5 something, let's say million, right? You're impressed that I did that? So I guess the question is, is there anything else we can find? Is there funds we can find?
We're researching it, Mr. Schrottweiser, myself, and Ms. Manuel have all looked through opportunities. The only thing that we potentially, want to explore a little further is maybe into a municipal agreement. Some districts have reached out to the town. It does get a lot of community use.
Yes.
We're not charging any of it facility fees for the tennis courts, where we are charging.
We asked for
So
that
I'm
last
going
year,
to
we,
tell you that I did
we did
speak
it
with
with
our
last year.
town representative last year, asked for this intermunicipal agreement. They did not think that they had the funding for that type of stuff. That is when they told us at the time to talk to Tom Swazi, because they thought that he had some funding. We did talk to him at the time. That didn't really get us anywhere. He is no longer our congressman. So we did try. I think it would definitely behoove us to try again.
Sure,
Right, of
that's
course.
what we'd like
Yes,
to.
I think
Yes,
it would,
yes,
but I
yes,
just want to give you some background, that I did have this discussion last year, and it didn't really get us anywhere. Maybe, did we not have it with the county as well? Did we talk to Delia? 'Cause I think
Did
she
talk to
said
Delia, yes.
So I think it's definitely worth trying again. So, but I think just, and you're right, there is community use, which is why I'm saying, is there something else we could do? So
well, for our community use, we don't charge for that, is that correct? It's like the.
So we only charge for organized, if
Right.
it's an organized organization coming on, they'd get a facilities use permit, but as far as just using the tennis
Tennis
courts, no,
courts.
there's no charge. There is districts that, again, that have these municipal agreements, make it a town park, and then they put an attendant out there on the weekends, so there are some, fee structures, that's all depends on where funding comes and, but, yes.
In terms of the status of the courts, I hear you saying they're not dangerous.
No.
But I know when we're dealing with an athletic surface, right, turf field, assuming the same is true of a tennis court, there are gradations, right? There's dangerous, obviously, if it was dangerous, we'd have to deal with it immediately. Then there's not as good for our athletes as it should be. Are we at that point where it's not as good for our athletes and we should be rectifying it from that perspective?
I believe, Mr. Schreiber,
We do
would
look to-
classify
yes.
the tennis courts as
Yes.
we need to, address them, to have an appropriate varsity level, court.
Yeah, to be frank, it's an embarrassment. When other teams come here, and because of who we are, and then they see our tennis courts, like I said before, it has 3 surfaces. It has clay, grass, and the concrete that's there.
Right.
And it's just, it's beyond unacceptable. I played on those courts. You have the San Andreas fault line going through many of them. We put Bondo on the cracks as much as we can. But it's at the point where it's not even diminishing returns. It's not optimal for our kids. And at some point, I think there are tripping hazards there. And I think the staff does a great job evening out. Drainage is beyond an issue, which is part of the reason why we have so many cracks there.
Right.
On top of that. So, and then as Brian was saying before, I mean, we have parents putting their headlights on for lights.
Right,
So the kids can play in a varsity match. And we're talking about, we have state champs, we have county champs. I mean, so we are at the point where we have to do something too. I'm not channeling Nick right now.
You are channeling
I am.
this Stratweiser
These are
right
my
now.
gut-
Yes,
It is something we have to do, and I agree with Emily, are there other ways we can do that? Can the USDA potentially, spend some money this way? So we'll continue to look, but we are at the point where we have to do something very soon.
I think we also
should
seriously
do some
also-
private donations as well.
Well, I think private donations as well, but I think we also should ask if there's any, especially if we're putting lighting in at this time, if there's any EPC benefits that we can get or anything, I don't know. Again, just to be creative, ask a question, they might say, you've got to be kidding me, that's not how it works, but I think at this point, we need to start looking at all, uncover every aspect that we can, so. Do we need to make this though a more prioritized discussion at a bigger board meeting? Or are we still looking and thinking that as you're working through the budget, I mean, I don't want to add another $1.2 million,
Right, but I
right?
think Julie, but discussion wise, I'm sorry, I think that at our next board meeting, this has to be discussed full board, because we did have a board member
That's
who
fine.
wanted to see the numbers. I think we give the number.
I mean, we have.
And we
No,
have to have
well,
a
we're gonna
discussion.
give an update, so in the update from the Budget Facilities Committee,
I think
what
the
I,
board needs to be told, do you wanna increase your transfer? I think.
well, that's part of our discussion, isn't it? We're having it here, so yes, so we can talk about that. So is that okay?
Can I ask one more question too, in terms of ranking? I mean, I hate to ask this question, right, because I think that the roof plan that we have in place now is to make sure that we never have an acute
Right.
roof issue again. But if we were putting the tennis courts on a list with the things that are in our transfer to capital, where would it fall on the rankings of these things? And I asked that question knowing that like, the flooring and bathrooms, these are small numbers, it's $200,000 in total. That's not going to defray a lot of tennis court costs. Our roof projects are large in the scheme of things in this transfer to capital. Like if we're comparing these roof projects and the tennis courts, is the tennis courts last on that list? Or are we ahead enough on the roofs that there's some good put off? Sorry.
No, so I'll take that. I think the roofs are more important.
Okay.
I do. Student safety wise, everything else is attached to it. We certainly don't want a Guggenheim event to happen ever again.
Right,
And I
right,
know
right,
ways of
right.
applying them.
Right.
I think we will continue to try to be creative and see how we could pay for the tennis courts. But I think the roofs are paramount.
Can I just ask then, so we'll have this discussion at the March 21st meeting. It would be helpful to show the board what it means from a big picture number as we stand today, what an increase to your transfer to capital does and what the permutations are as far, and so anything that we can do to have that presented as far as where we stand with it at this point, and then if we do increase it by 1.2 million, what that really looks like and all of the ramifications it has associated with it.
Yeah.
That can be
Including
presented
how it
on this little
functions
piece of
as a
paper
taxpayer.
that looks like this. You can just put it up here.
Yeah, I would just add it to that.
And we share it with them. I also would like to, if you have no problem, we'll attach this historical revenue and your state aid comparison for our discussion, just because I think it's helpful for the board to have this information as well. Is that good? Is everyone okay with that? I'm sorry, we went 14 minutes over. I really do want to open up to the community. If you have a super burning fast question, we'll give it like 3 minutes. Is that okay? I know, I'm sorry. I
We're
feel
not gonna say no.
you can say no to me, I'm sorry, this is, but I
No,
do,
bless you.
not that you're, yes, you can say no, yes. All right, Ms. Alvarez,
I had 3 questions. I'm gonna do the one that was not mine, Jess Linden and Jess Malwani to leave early.
yes.
All 3 of us are Mount Haven parents. Jess Linden is a Mount Haven PTA president. She asked, since this is a budget season, Mount Haven, we actually both have kindergarten children. And kindergarten has already hit the 24 per class number. My daughter has another student entering her class today, that she told me all night. So Jess would like to know if there is a plan in place for first grade personnel next year for Mount Haven School. That was her
Stay tuned
pressing.
for the meetings. Stay tuned for further meetings.
What I can say is that Mount Haven's principal, Ms. Diaz, has advocated to make sure that what's happening this year does not happen next year, which means not to extract a teacher from a different grade level and then pump them into first grade. So she's advocated for that, that's in consideration, and that's where we are.
I also think that just for, stay tuned, it is an old business question that's being addressed at the board meeting as well, which in the next few weeks, we may even have more information, because we're going to be talking about personnel.
Yep.
So, thank you for being judicious in your questions, I appreciate that for time. Anyone else have like a super burning question that has to be asked right now at this moment? Oh, Rupali, yes, go ahead.
Just on the part on the demographics
Yes.
survey, will they be publishing the methodology for projection? And is there any way to tweak any of the assumptions that are going to be made further out than 5 years?
That's a good question. I believe we do have some of the assumptions, I can ask for that. But as far as tweaking, we have to discuss that.
We can ask the demographer, right, in that regard, right? So
Yeah,
that would be a great question
The
for
draft
them.
report we saw had very clear assumptions
Right,
built in.
right.
So,
Oh, so it's included in the draft report already?
yeah,
That's good.
they outlined how they came up with their projection.
And so last, one thing, in addition to that, do they have any confidence of intervals for those years? Like what is their, probably like what they think the confidence?
I think it's their reasoning, right? So they list why they're saying what they are. So I guess we'll find
I
that
think
out.
that Rupali's asking about confidence intervals. You mean, is there a span of numbers given?
Yes.
Like an actual statistical confidence interval?
I
sorry.
think we have to see their report to know that.
Well, some of us have seen it.
Yeah. But that is another really good question. Let us get back to you about that, and then we'll see. Yeah,
It might be
sure.
helpful to have the
Double
data,
check.
that makes sense.
presentation, and really more formally doing it.
And flashbacks to statistics
Statistics,
classes,
yes.
yes,
It's okay.
Otherwise, we're all good. Because now I'm gonna owe I'm really gonna owe Dr. Hines now, because I really extended enough all my hours, so yes. Everyone else, thank you all for attending. This was the best attended budget meeting, and I just can't say thank you enough, so thank you, and thank you, Dr. Hines.
Yes, very true.
What is John doing as far as life insurance?
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't know, I cannot.